Chaos Drive Me Mad, Chapter 3. There was a ring at the door, and I could faintly hear it from my room, the result of the high volume of the television in my parents' bedroom down the hall. You would think whoever turned it up had some hearing issue. I closed the door behind me and went to see who it was, Trey appearing through the peephole. I opened the door for him and he shook my hand. He exchanged pleasantries with my mother, who handed him a bottle of water, and we walked back to my room. I handed him my phone, having it set to the messages, and moved over to sit on my bed while Trey bent over to sit on the floor. I would estimate several moments went by, consisting of him reading the messages and me trying to look away while he did so, before I spoke again. "That conversation we had yesterday," I said. "The one by text. What about it?" he asked. "The arguments you were making while Original supported a view of mine that suggested talking to her and most other women that I've interacted with in the hopes of starting something romantic was an enormous waste of time." I've heard that line before. Yeah, but people never try to get the logic behind it. That viewpoint was never based around thinking I was smarter than them and therefore too mentally superior to be in their favor, but rather that I was too unsophisticated on how to operate the maze and labyrinth of trying to get one to see me as something or someone that they could want, that was more than just a possibility. You think none of them have ever seriously considered starting something with you? You know how that one turned out. Rivka? I looked away from him and nodded my head. My mind entered a state of reflection, me remembering the morning in early September that I was sitting in my room on my bed when I received a DM on Instagram. "Hey, I read your post from February. Maybe you don't get dates because you intimidate them. Good luck," Rivka wrote. I instantly knew what she was talking about. That past February, I posted a picture of myself staring into the camera with the caption, "Sometimes I try to pretend that I'm not bothered by my lack of dates, and sometimes it bothers me to think that no matter how much I approach or implement some new strategy as devised by self-described romance philosophers, it's never going to get any better." After rereading that post, which I had completely left to itself the moment after it was released and never referred back to, I returned to her message. Anyone who had typed that I intimidate women as a possibility for my continued singlehood, I concluded, possibly may harbor some romantic interest. And was this view such an extreme one? Never before had I remembered a woman on social media coming to me in such a matter. It was quite the new experience. "Thank you. Would it be possible for me to get some way of speaking to you outside of here?" I asked. "Yes, Skype," she said, providing her username right after. I had long since abandoned Skype, save for the occasional time I logged back in to see if anyone had sent me a friend request. After typing in and locating a user with the same name she had provided me with, I sat in place waiting for the request to be accepted. After it went through, I received a notification. "Hey," she typed. "So do you like me?" I asked her. "Wow, LOL, that was really quick." I was tempted to type hi or hello, but I figured we'd cut to the chase. "Ah, okay. Then yeah." "Well, what are we going to do about it? Do you want me to come see you?" "Nah, we live countries away. Besides, you don't even know what I look like." "There's a picture of a dark-haired woman on your account. You're saying that's not you?" "So you do know what I look like?" "And you know what I look like. We apparently both like what we see, so why not try?" "Well, I'm Jewish. You said in another post that you're Catholic." "I am. You're telling me you've invented a religious barrier?" "No, but my parents would get mad if I didn't do what they wanted me to." "Okay, my parents become upset with some things I do as well." "I wouldn't be able to come back to them." "How old are you?" 22, you?" 20. "Maybe we should speak by voice before throwing in the towel." "LOL, okay." I don't know what's dumber, me believing that you like me physically and mentally, or you saying it despite doing the reverse of it, I said. "I just don't feel as if I'm the right one for you." "I just don't feel that the right one is more than anything but a concept. That line in of itself is nonsensical. I'm always going to have differences and disagreements with people, but whoever I have the most connection with out of those available to me is the best suited." "You don't think a better suited person will come after me?" "No." "But did you think I would come along?" "No." "So you don't know what kind of person is going to come after me?" "That's true, but I know that most women I'm into don't reciprocate. This has included those that I felt had more in common with me than just the average female. A person better suited for me than you could come around, but if they don't think they are, kind of like how you're doing right now, then what difference does it make?" I felt a tug against my shoulder that brought me back into the present time and away from my remembrances. It was my younger brother who had one hand on my shoulder and the other holding a small blanket that he had used to sleep with since his birth 5 years prior. "Augustus, what's wrong?" Corey asked me. "Nothing. You seem frightened." "You just look really sad, and I don't want to know. I don't want to know that something happened to you." "I'm fine. Trey and me are just having a conversation about a lot of different things." As though satisfied, Corey nodded his head and left the room, closing the door behind him. I lacked words for the next few moments and stared at the door. "Trying to make sure he's not ear hustling from the other side?" Trey asked, to which I nodded my head. Trey stood up and walked over to the door, allowing both of us to see into the hallway and know that no one was there. "Why are you so worried about him hearing us? It's not like he hasn't heard bad words before," Trey said, "ever since he could spoon words into his mouth. I can always remember Corey wanting to talk to me. One time he even said he wanted to be like me, and that was when he was 3. How am I supposed to look him in the eye ever again, knowing that he knows that the guy he wants to be like is regarded by the opposite sex as inadequate?" That's a pretty generalizing comment. You know what I mean? It seems like every time one of them shows interest, and I think for a few days that there's at least one that wants to be with me, they end up backfiring, going right back to the same space I started in. Single and unintended. I breathed a sigh and looked over to the wall. "There was one thing I wanted to speak about more than anything else," I said. "This woman said she can't think of anyone to go with to this party, including the man she's been dating for a quarter of a year. And I was thinking about Rivka and how she wanted to just stop trying to get close before even trying. This reminded me of that. Because she doesn't want to go with you to a party, you don't think she'll ever want to develop anything? It's that, and her not wanting to speak by phone. If I can't meet you in person, I can't talk to you over the phone, how do I ever ascend beyond confine the text Augustus?" There was a knock on the door. Trey stood and opened it. My father came into the room still wearing his pajamas and extended a hand to Trey. "So, when are we going to talk about this Shannon woman?" my father asked during his handshake with Trey. "There isn't much to talk about," I said. "She's not really being receptive to my attempts at talking to her. Then throw her to the wind and find another one. That's what I intend to do." Were I wearing a mask, I'd have loved to have rolled my eyes in that moment. He smiled at me and walked out. That was the briefest, most accurate advice I've ever heard him give, Trey said. "I haven't tried talking to him about a woman I was into in about 2 years," I replied. "Is there a reason for that?" "I just don't think that what he suggests really works for me. The way he talks about dating is that you just go and meet 50 people and 5 of them will say yes and they'll all turn out to be not who you wanted it to be, but someone will finally show up long term. Looks like you two have different personalities. Common interests and goals, but different ways of going about them." I went to the messages section of my phone and to those I had exchanged with Shannon, typing her a new one. "So if you don't want to talk to me over the phone or meet me in person, how do I escape being confined to text?" I placed my phone on the charger and moved away from it, looking over to Trey, who was staring at the wall. "I was thinking about that time Rivka told me that someone better than her would or could come around," I said. "I remember you mentioned that to me before." Trey replied, "You think someone better than her has?" "No, that's why I thought her saying that was stupid. All it does is give you an excuse to have ridiculously high standards and hedge your bets on someone meeting more of them randomly appearing. Remind me again, how many women have you tried talking to since it ended with her last month?" I sat there and thought, placing my legs to the floor and staring into space. There was one female that I spoke with concurrently, though met afterward. I concur that she factored as one. I've private messaged at least 5 over the course of the previous month and been met with no response. There was another that approached me about my supposed specialness and stopped speaking to me after a couple of days abruptly. And there was another that private messaged me 3 times only to answer no when I asked point blank if she was interested in me. At least 8, I told him. I've only had about 3 or 4 that I spoke with for a couple of days and weeks before it ended since then, though. Maybe you can try approaching another one in person. Every time I do, I always get this feeling in my stomach that it won't work. Isn't that self-defeating? Sometimes, but I occasionally bypass it. And can you blame me for feeling that way? Look at all the times where it hasn't worked. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," I said. My mother walked into the room. She was clad in a bathrobe. "Apparently, every member of my immediate family is going to come crash through the door today," I said to Trey while eyeing my mother. "Well, you won't come to us with anything you're upset about, but you keep talking and chatting with Trey," she replied with a smirk. "There is a lack of judgment I get from our interactions." "Well, my mistake. I didn't know your little brother and sister were such vocal critics of your actions." Her sarcasm would have been amusing were it towards someone else, or maybe if I was feeling different. "So, can he and I continue speaking, and then you and I can have our back and forth later on?" I asked. Her face seemed to light up, and she displayed a smirk that was almost childlike, as though the thought of talking to her own son was somehow the reward she had wanted since coming into the room. "Sure," she said. "See both of you later." She closed the door behind her. "Your family is very animated," Trey told me. "You should talk to them about this kind of stuff." "They can't help me where I'm going," I said to him. "As animated as you think they are, find one that can make women have interest in me, and then I'll concede their usefulness in this field." The two of us drifted off into some other topics, namely about the news and what was going on in that field before he left an hour later. I ate with my family that evening and retired to my bedroom slightly earlier than I usually did, wrapping myself in covers while closing my eyes. It was around 10 p.m. when I went to bed and close to 7 a.m. when I awoke. I silently moved out of my room and walked to the kitchen. I threw together a bowl of cereal in a few minutes and retreated back to my room, eating the contents of the bowl before hearing the notification noise on my phone go off at a moderate volume. I placed the bowl to the side and saw that it was from Shannon. "Took me a long time to see this," she typed. The delayed response was one that could be expected. I'd recognized I wasn't her top priority from the start. "I don't want to text anymore." "At all?" I asked. "Yeah, sorry."